get nuts. Let's get nuts.
Learn it? Did you want to fight? Is that the deal?
Whoa, bro.
You want to fight?
Before I start, I want to say that this is going to be spoiler free. We're talking about The Flash. So I actually really liked this movie. It's extremely entertaining, it has a lot of action in it, it's fun, it's funny, it knows when to take itself seriously, and it knows when to tell a joke. So in this movie, we obviously, Ezra Miller is playing the Flash or Barry Allen. And with the controversy surrounding Ezra Miller, I was really worried that that was going to kind of bleed over into me being able to like his performance and his character. I thought it was going to be a problem to be able to separate him from the character of Barry Allen. Luckily, it sounds a little weird, but Ezra Miller was able to get me to actually like him, and I was able to separate the two. Ezra Miller actually did a pretty good job. But I will say there is one thing that kind of bothers me about Ezra Miller, and it's not in his performance, it's just Ezra Miller has like a really soft voice, and it bothers me sometimes.
This is mad trippy. Dude, this is catastrophic.
Now, in most scenes, it doesn't bother me. It kind of adds to the fact that he's a nerd. And you kind of need that because, for one, you don't get a lot of nerds with a jawline like that. However, there's a few scenes where he gets angry. And at one point, he's like yelling at somebody. And instead of sounding like a young man yelling at somebody, he kind of just sounds like a young man whining.
There might not be a future.
So instead of like him being like, oh, I'm angry, he's just like, oh, I'm angry and I'm so mad at you. Why would you do this to me? I can't take him seriously like when he gets mad like that. Maybe I need to see him get mad in real life and then maybe I would take him seriously. I'm sure I would. Maybe that's how this all started. Nobody thought he could be intimidating. He's like, I'll show you intimidating.
Just knock you out and then you won't have to panic.
Right, you just gotta knock
You just
people
let me
out.
know.
Yeah.
No? Yes?
What?
This is just like tiny little gripe. And it also has to do with the scene where he gets angry. But in the scenes where he does yell, he does raise his voice. And this isn't on Ezra Miller, this is on the writing. They could have cleaned up the dialogue a little bit. And this could literally just be me. Maybe no one else will notice it. So at one point, Barry gets mad and he's like kind of yelling at somebody. The things that he says sound like they came from the first draft of the script. I think I'm the only one. I haven't heard anybody say anything about it. So that could just be me. It's not a big deal. And we're going to move on. So there's one thing that I actually really appreciated in this movie. And it was the way that the writers were able to work around Barry Allen's powers. Barry Allen is extremely OP. And sometimes characters with that kind of power can be kind of hard to write for because it's kind of hard to write around that power and create believable conflict. Not all the time, but it can be. And so sometimes I feel like you have to find a way to be able to balance those characters to where it's realistic and it's believable, at least in the context and the setting of the movie. You see this a lot in the Flash TV show where there would be a problem that was presented or a conflict, and you could go in and pick it apart so easily because it's like this conflict never should have even happened because Barry is the fastest man in the world and he could have fixed it in like negative 3 seconds. But they find kind of clever ways to put some limits on his powers, and I think they did a pretty good job. At least to the point where I'm sure there's people that can come in and they could probably rip this movie apart and say, oh, why didn't Barry do this? Why didn't Barry do that? But at least to the average person, the problems presented by his abilities and his powers isn't obvious enough to ruin the movie experience. So there you go. Maybe for some people it will, but for me it didn't. And I think that they did a good job. So I've never read any of the DC comics, and I definitely don't know a ton about Barry Allen or The Flash. The knowledge I have is probably pretty close to what the general knowledge is of Barry Allen. So I can't tell the huge fans out there of The Flash whether or not this is true to the comics or true to Barry Allen. But just from the standpoint of this character, the character, how I understand him from this movie, there's something about it where the person that wrote this feels like they genuinely do care about this character and they're not trying to make a mockery of him. And they take his struggles and who he really is into account, and they are trying their best to create a story that is going to bring out the best arcs and character for who he is. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong, you know. It wouldn't be the first time. And I will leave it at that. There's also probably going to be some references that they make that aren't going to make like a ton of sense for maybe some people. And I'm sure there were probably some things that went over my head. But if you want, I can actually do a video on a couple of them. Michael Keaton is in this movie, reprising his role as Batman. I thought that he actually did a pretty good job. I do think that when he wasn't wearing his mask, I was actually kind of surprised, because I was like, you actually look fairly good for your age. I don't know exactly how old Michael Keaton is, but he's got to be getting up there. And I thought he looked pretty good. Like, I thought he was going bald. He was going bald like when Tim Burton's first Batman came out. Was it 89? But I will say it was a long time ago, and it looked like Michael Keaton was losing his hair even then. And so I'm like, how do you still have your hair? Because it was like, I thought it was leaving a long time ago, but it's still here. So that's good. But when he's wearing his mask, there's something that looks a little off. Other than that, I think he does a good job. All right, and now you've probably heard this. If you've heard that this movie has bad CGI, yeah, it's true. The CGI in this movie is not very good. And this is coming from somebody that I do not fault movies on CGI generally. I will rarely do that. I appreciate it. I respect it, of course, but I am a character girl. If I like your character, I'll sit through pretty much anything. You can drag me through whatever garbage, CGI garbage you want to, or any other kind of garbage, and I'll probably still be hanging on because of those characters. With that said, the CGI is not the greatest in here. Is it distracting sometimes? Yes, sometimes it is a little bit distracting. Does it take away from the movie? Maybe sometimes, but not all the time. When there's CGI like on the actual humans, I think it looks pretty bad. But it is really creative and it is really fun, even if it's not the best. But in the end, I recommend this movie. I really honestly don't know if this Flash is going to be in future projects. I'm kind of torn because I do like this Flash, and I don't even like to say this because I think that Ezra Miller seems like a creep. But now that I actually kind of like his portrayal of Barry Allen, I'm like kind of wondering, I'm like, well, do I want him to keep playing Barry Allen, or I don't really know what they're going to do with that? Like, are they going to fire him because you don't really want a liability? You don't know what else he's going to go off and do, so they might replace him. I don't know where DC even stands right now. I don't know how this movie is going to fit in with the future of DC. But like I said, I recommend this movie. I think that it was really fun and enjoyable. I think the characters were good. I think the story was good. The CGI was a little bit goofy, wasn't the greatest, but it was creative. All right, so that's all I got for right now. This is the Happy Critic. Just keep watching movies, guys, and keep being happy. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
My name is Ezra Miller, and I am criminally excited to be a part of the Justice League.